This is the fourth module in the Interdisciplinary Training Core Curriculum for trainees, but is also available for community providers and parents who are interested in culture and equity in early childhood. If you are a trainee, you can substitute this module for the introductory module on culture. I'm Dr. Jolena Farrell, and you'll hear my voice throughout this module. Vulnerable children are those with challenging behaviors that put them at risk for suspension and expulsion. Developmentally young children are in the process of learning social skills and how to respond to adult expectations. Children learn these skills at different rates and at different ages. There are many reasons for this. One is maturation. Brains and bodies develop at different rates. Children learn new skills at different rates and times. Some children may not have had the opportunity to be in an environment in which they can learn to share and cooperate with other children. Sometimes they don't have a good model, or the expectations for the child's behavior are a little different than those found in their preschool program. We know that 10 to 30% of preschool children exhibit poor social skills and emotional competency and need to be taught if they are to be successful. Typical responses to challenging behavior include ignoring the behavior, punishing the behavior, such as putting a child in timeout, removing the child from the class, and ultimately suspension or expulsion. We know that the rates of expulsion are 3 times higher in preschool when compared to K through 12. In addition, we know there are racial disparities in the use of suspension and expulsion. These data are provided by the U.S. Department of Education Office for Civil Rights. They include only state-funded center-based pre-kindergarten programs in schools and in the community. No one knows how often children and families are asked to leave other community child care settings because of behavior. It may mean that actual suspension and expulsion rates and disproportional use of suspension and expulsion are actually much higher. These data show that boys and African American preschoolers in particular are suspended disproportionately. African American boys are more than 3 times more likely to be suspended than their white and Latino peers, and African American girls are more than twice as likely to be suspended than their peers. The 2014-2015 data recently released shows the same disparities. The problem was so important that the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Education issued a joint policy statement about suspension and expulsion to identify an expectation and practices that would eliminate suspension and expulsion. The link for this statement is provided here, but you can also find the policy statement on the website for the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations, which I'll provide later. Download the policy statement by clicking on the link. Once you've done that, you can click in the shaded area to advance to the next slide. The Pyramid Equity Project was a 2-year project that was funded by the U.S. Department of Education and the Department of Human Services. Funding was funneled through the Technical Assistance Center on Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports at the University of Oregon and provided to the PBI-STA Center, the University of South Florida, Florida Center for Inclusive Communities, and the University of Colorado, Denver. The goal was to develop and disseminate an effective approach for preventing suspension, expulsion, and discipline disparities in pre-K programs using the pyramid model. The tools, materials, and demonstrations emphasized evidence-based early childhood practices, culturally responsive practices, and how to address implicit bias. The National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations is funded by the Office of Special Education Programs as a training and technical assistance center to build the capacity of states and early childhood programs to implement evidence-based practices in social emotional development. All of the materials developed through the Pyramid Equity Project are included on the NCPMI website, challengingbehaviors.org. Click on the video link for an introduction to equity and disproportionality in early childhood settings. You will also find additional equity resources on the link at the bottom of the page. Once you've listened to the video, you can click on the shaded area to advance to the next slide. The introduction was done by Dr. Rosemarie Allen. Dr. Allen has experience in both equity issues and early childhood education. She speaks frequently at venues throughout the country and is highly regarded at the national and community level. You'll find a longer biographical sketch for Dr. Allen on the next link. In addition to the introduction, Dr. Allen has hosted the first in a series of webinars about equity, discipline, and effective strategies for combating suspension and expulsion. A panel of experts represent different perspectives on the issue of equity in early childhood. You'll also find a biographical statement for each on the webinar link. This webinar is also about suspension and expulsion and equity. It lasts about 55 minutes. You may want to view it later. The discussion includes information about disproportionate discipline, implicit bias, what it is, and some ways to address it, and ideas for change. I strongly urge you to check out the rest of the materials and resources related to equity and social emotional development on challengingbehavior.org. If you view the video now, you'll need to return to this module to complete your survey and get your certificate of completion. Click on the shaded area to advance to the next slide. Thank you for viewing the video, and please be sure to complete the survey.